my name is Maya Ella Beaudran.
Happy birthday, dear Maya. Happy birthday to you.
I'm a Homo sapien. My life is evolving every day and has been since February 10th, 2006. But the true beginning to my story starts 7 million years ago. I'm going to compare my life as an individual to the entire human evolution. In the Homo genius, they were all bipedal, meaning they could walk around on 2 feet. There are a few theories on how we started walking upright. The most logical one to me is called the provisioning theory. This suggests that bipedalism was meant for pair bonding. There's even fossil evidence that supports this claim, showing males' bone structures, including their teeth and body, to be significantly larger than females'. Despite males having larger teeth than females, humans overall had small canines. This was because they weren't using their teeth to hunt, instead they used stone tools. Finally, in order to create, humans all had relatively large brains. My immediate family consists of my mother, brother, father, and I. We all enjoy hands-on work and can create. My brother has dedicated lots of his life to working on planes, my mother makes art, and my father plays guitar. We are all also well-educated individuals who take the time to be informed. Finally, we all use phones and modern technology, much like the ancient humans who used stone tools instead. Our first common ancestor broke away from chimpanzees, but the first human species was discovered 2.5 million years ago in East Africa. Because the hominids and humans were not busy documenting their lives, archaeologists and researchers used ancient artifacts to study who they were. In my life, I rely on technology like 23andMe to track down where my DNA is from. What I've learned is that I owe my existence to primarily my French, Polish, and Croatian descendants. 500,000 years later, the Homo erectus may have been the first hominid to migrate out of Africa. They were the most durable human species, living up to 2 million years. Their stone tool technology also hadn't evolved much by this point. Humans first used a technology called hard hammering, where you take 2 rocks and hit them together to make a sharp edge, then forming a point. This made it easier to throw the tool than capture something to eat. They would often use the tools to crack open bones to reach the marrow. They eventually did something else called soft hammering, where they used wood to take off thinner pieces of the rocks to make it even sharper. During this time, it's also important to realize that humans were not at the top of the food chain. As most babies and toddlers, most of my communication was through actions and a few words. My knowledge was limited and I was still exploring a new world. As far as we know, I was the first Beaudran in my family to be born in America. Like the Homo erectus, I was making history, even if it was just in my little family. Taking a leap to 300,000 years ago, we see the Neanderthals and Homo sapiens forefathers starting to use fire on a daily basis. This was a huge thing for them because it would completely change the way they could eat but also protect. Fire allowed them to cook food that otherwise would not be digestible, like wheat, rice, and potatoes. When their food was cooked, it killed germs that might have been inhabiting it. Not to mention the time spent eating was dramatically decreased because chewing was a lot easier. After gaining confidence domesticating fire, humans would have a better chance of scaring off larger predators. I was creating too. As soon as I reached a point in my life that I could speak, I was filming, dancing, painting, making music. This was revolutionary for who I would become because these would turn into my passions, especially film. I would sit in front of the camera for hours just talking to the phone about whatever it is I felt like. It is a bit unclear when Homo sapiens first appeared, but most sources say it was around 200,000 to 300,000 years ago, so most likely around the same time of the domestication of fire. Either way, they had completely populated East Africa by 150,000 years ago. Before entering elementary school, I had primarily the same 2 or 3 friends, but once I did get to go in, I was immersing myself into others' lives. As researchers were studying ancient stone tools, they noticed something starting to happen to them. Around 250,000 years ago, different regions and countries had variations in the patterns of their tools. You may not think much about this, but it actually suggests early humans were able to communicate with one another, and we believe this to be the beginning of language. Not long after, there's evidence of humans' jaws having a flexed bottom, which would make language and talking easier. just like early humans, I was able to speak a new language too. By elementary school, I was attending a lycée. Essentially, this meant lots of our classes were actually taught in French. Learning French was an evolution in itself. There were moments where I was improving very slowly, while other times I was excelling.
Vous dessinez des fleurs. Les lettres font la fête.
70,000 years ago, we start to see the effects of something that will change Homo sapiens and the world forever. There was a revolution in the sapiens' cognitive abilities, allowing them to think creatively and create fictions. This part of human evolution is called the cognitive revolution. No one is completely sure what caused it, but the best guess we have is that it was a random genetic mutation causing our brains to be wired in a completely new way. First, we could connect sounds into unlimited amounts of sentences and be able to be specific with what we say. We could also gossip about each other since we were very social animals and needed to know who we could trust and who we could not. And finally, although these both may have been an important role in how Homo sapiens became the only human species alive, there's one more crucial part of the cognitive revolution. This is that we were able to discuss things and believe things that do not exist. Things like religions, beliefs, myths, and gods, allowing everyone to intertwine into a common belief that allowed them to work with strangers in large groups collectively. I may not have had a genetic mutation in my brain, but I didn't need it to see the world differently. While I was growing up in the city, I never thought too much about the plastic in our trees or the wrappers on our ground, because it was normal for New York City. It wasn't until my parents had told me about the effects it had on our planet that my perception was changed forever. I was astonished that some of the adults in our world were not doing anything. I decided that I would always take matters into my own hands. I traveled with my mom's organization and educated others on climate change. I testified at city council and state house, even meeting the state representative. Since then, I have branched out to other real issues, fighting to make our world a better place. Homo sapiens were now exploring other parts of Asia and Europe, and a bit after the cognitive revolution, we quickly start to see other human species go extinct. There are a few theories on how this happened, but the two more popular ones are the replacement theory and the interbreeding theory. The interbreeding theory suggests that Homo sapiens and other human species interbred, making humans today not 100% sapiens. This theory is a bit controversial because different species aren't able to have fertile offspring, but there have been DNA tests showing traces of Neanderthals in some modern humans. The replacement theory says that Homo sapiens did not merge with any other species and simply replaced all other humans when they died off. Towards the end of my elementary school years, I moved to a small town that felt like the country to me. This forced me to adapt to a completely new environment. At the time, I tried to stay in touch with others, but it was quite difficult, so in a way, I had to replace those friendships. But this is also when I really started getting into film and really improved in my skills. Finally, 45,000 years ago, Homo sapiens migrated to Australia. No one is quite clear how they made it there, but the first ones to move were probably the bands who'd already traveled by water and invented rafts. Once they made it, they completely changed Australia. So many ecosystems were destroyed, mainly affecting larger animals whose pregnancies were a long process and couldn't keep up with the rise of the Homo sapiens and their hunting. Just like the Homo sapiens settled down in Australia, I settled down in Massachusetts. But more recently, in 2020, the entire planet has changed. COVID has affected all of our lives. And I got to use my passions for film and create Quarantine, and it opened up so many opportunities. My film was even in the largest student film festival. So, how did new species appear? Basically, through natural selection, genetic mutations, and geological barriers. If two groups of a species were separated and living in different environments, they would have to adapt differently. Then, random genetic mutations occur. If these genetic mutations are helpful for survival, others will want to mate with them. The ones without the new helpful genetic trait will most likely die off, eventually creating a new species. This is also called speciation. Through my evolution, there have been so many things that influenced me, but mostly my parents' information that changed my perception and opportunities. We see these in action during my travels, activism, and film. This video didn't even get through half of the things that make Homo sapiens so different and special from other animals. But most of the things that do distinguish Homo sapiens from other species comes down to the cognitive revolution. From there, we were able to grow and become the people that we are today. And as for me, I'm not even halfway through my journey. But I know that no matter where I go and who I become, I'm always going to have my optimism, my dedication, my creativity, and my love for happiness.
De lugar no sagrado, se nos estresa